Hey guys, welcome back. You know what? I am joined by a return guest today, and she's actually my first. So,
Oh,
a
I'm your
while back,
first return guest?
yes, you are. You are. So, some time back, I chatted with Lindy Hockenberry, and we had a great conversation on ed tech and professional development. And I said, I want to do a part 2 with her to dive more into the accessibility aspect of this line of work. So she's finally here. You know, we've been talking about it for a while, and due to events that have come up on both of our ends, we've had to delay it. But we are here, and she is, you know, she is on limited time, so I'm not going to hold her hostage. So, welcome back. How are you, ma'am?
Good. Busy, busy. Summer is busy time in my world with teachers being out of school, and now we're already in back to school season. So, yeah, good, but busy.
Right. So, when we last talked, we briefly touched on accessibility, and we started talking a little bit about, I guess you could say, neurodivergence. We looked at schools that are, we're looking at certain countries who are kind of cutting down, I guess you could say, on their digital learning. Like they're replacing screens with books, pencil, paper. So basically,
Yep.
if you grew up in school before, I would honestly say before 2010, you probably are familiar with an overhead projector. If you were in elementary school around 2005, you probably were familiar with the Promethean board. But first things first, what do you think? So, do you think that this is going to be a good thing that we're moving away from that, or that's like Sweden, for example, is moving away from that? Or do you think that students who have LDs or ADHD are gonna be impacted some way from it?
So, I do think that this is starting a good, healthy conversation around what is good instructional technology use.
Right,
I like that part. Unfortunately, I think that the policies and legislation that are coming into play that are setting limits, like, 30 minutes of quote unquote screen time a day, are going to have a lot of unintended consequences. And a lot of those unintended consequences are going to be negative in lots of ways, shapes, and forms. I actually did an interview for my podcast earlier today, and we talked about teacher use versus student use. And we were talking about early childhood. So imagine preschool, kindergarten, first grade. And we were like, most of these policies and legislation are saying no screen time whatsoever at those age group. We're like, well, what if the teacher wants to show a Go Noodle video, which if you're not familiar with Go Noodle, they're brain breaks. So they
right,
get students up and moving and dancing and singing. What if the teacher wants to show that? Is that screen time? Does that count as screen time? Right. So it opens up all these questions. The other big problem is exactly what you said, the neurodivergent community. There's a lot of people in that community that absolutely rely on technology for equitable access to learning and information. And I've heard people come back with the argument, oh, well, it's fine, we'll give access to those people that need it, especially those kids when we're talking K-12, right? If they have an IEP or a 504 plan, we'll give them access. That is such a flawed argument in so many ways, shapes, and forms, in my opinion. Number one, that assumes that every neurodivergent kid has a 504 or IEP plan. And we know that that's absolutely not the case.
right.
My husband's a perfect example. He went 38 years and got a master's degree before I looked at him one day and I was like, "You're dyslexic." He was a
Okay.
struggling reader all
Oh,
through
was he?
school and was never identified, right? And So that's part of it, is we know that there's learning disabilities out there like dysgraphia that we know very little about. We're still learning a lot about. Dysgraphia is kind of like the dyslexia of the 90s. One of the reasons my husband went undiagnosed, he went to a very small rural Montana school, and they didn't know a lot about dyslexia in the 90s, right? We're learning more and more about it. Dysgraphia is very similar now. So we know that there are kids out there that are dysgraphic that haven't been identified and therefore don't have an IEP or a 504 plan. So that's problem number one with that argument. Problem number two, and honestly, I don't know which one's the bigger problem, is it becomes stigmatizing. NPR did a really great article about this, where they interviewed a high school student who I believe was dyslexic and her mom. And they said that the access to the device literally changes her life and basically is the make or break of whether she is successful in school or not. And now that they're pulling devices out of other kids' hands, she's like, I'm in high school. I don't want to be like, excuse me, I need to have my device and be the only kid in the room of 20 or 30 kids that has a device. That's stigma. And when you're a middle school, high schooler, like you're even elementary kids, that's not okay. So they're not going to use it or ask for it if it becomes a stigmatizing thing. Versus if everybody has access to a device, it's not stigmatizing anymore. And the thing that gets me about this argument, sorry, last thing, long-winded answer, is that we went one to one for a reason. It didn't work when we didn't have one-to-one access. And now we're saying, oh, no, 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 no. We shouldn't be one-to-one anymore. We should go back to shared carts, or, only giving students access to devices in very specific times. It didn't work. That did not work. I was teaching during that time, and I was a tech integration specialist during that time. And teachers would tell me, oh, well, I'm never going to use the technology because I don't have access to it. I got to sign up to check out the cart. So guess what? They didn't
Mm,
do it. They
right,
didn't use it. And when you've got devices on a cart that's in another room, again, that doesn't provide that access for those students that absolutely rely on it.
right. And I lean more towards hybrid. I'm a hybrid guy myself. As somebody that works in ed tech, I kind of like to mix a bit of the old with the new. So, I think to some extent, I mean, you may have heard the expression about throwing the baby out with the bath water.
Yes.
Yes, and I think that's what's happening here. And I
Yes.
think now, if I do think that if you're gonna allow devices, or I would say typically you can't go wrong with Chromebooks because they are limited as to what students can access on them. Chromebooks don't allow you to download much. So if you are going to implement devices, I do think that you do need to specify the softwares or the products that you're going to allow to be downloaded on said device.
Oh, 100%. And you also have a web filter
Right,
that filters out things that students shouldn't have access for
right,
completely.
right,
And it's all about balance. I teach just as much with paper and post-it notes and highlighters and index cards as I do with devices. Actually, there are times where I do teacher trainings for teachers where they're like, I tell them to always bring your laptop. We always need your laptop.
right,
And we do very little with the laptop. Like we
right.
very and sometimes they comment on it. They're like, "Wait, I thought this was a technology training." But I'm doing things like teaching them how to have conversations about AI literacy with their students. A lot of that is very low tech or no tech.
And
Like we're not even touching their device. They're
right,
like, "Wait, I thought this was a technology training." I'm like, "Yes, but not."
ironic,
Yeah, ironic, and it kind of surprises them. It's all about balance. um but and giving access, equitable access, right? So not locking devices in a closet, making sure that a kid has the ability to use text to speech or speech to text if they know it, or
right,
has a scanning pen with them where they can actually read a physical book, or
yeah,
has the ability to get a digital book where they can change the font to the open dyslexic font. That changed my husband's life. Actually, that's how I realized that he was dyslexic,
Yeah.
was because I wrote a book about 6 years ago, a little over 6 years ago now. And I had put it onto my Kindle and I gave it to him. I'm like, hey, I just want you to read my book and flip through it and make sure everything looks good. Make sure the digital Kindle version looks good. And he switched the font because you can do this in Kindle. If you didn't know this, you need to know this and you need to show your students. You can change the fonts, and there's like 4 or 5 different fonts. One of them is called Open Dyslexic Font because it's
Oh
built
wow.
for people with dyslexia. And he
Yeah.
switched the font, and I heard him in the other room basically like yelling, like, "Oh my gosh, I can read." Like that's literally,
Yeah.
and to the point that that made such a big difference in his life that we both have Kindles now, and he used to never read for pleasure. I'm a big pleasure reader. I
Mhm.
like to read for fun. He never did. He reads now. He just reads on his Kindle and changes everything to open dyslexic font,
Huh. Cool.
and it completely changed the experience from being a horrible experience that he hated because reading was challenging for him to actually enjoying it and reading for pleasure.
Mm.
Like that's the difference that it can have in a person's life. Just a
Yeah.
simple thing like having access to a digital version of a book or an audio book or a scanning pen to help read a physical book.
Yeah. I thought that scanning pen, you introduced that to me the last time we talked. I was like, this is amazing. But it's funny that we talk about technology trainings and we do little to nothing on our own devices, which is kind of funny that so many computer labs on campuses are moving towards that BYOD format. But
Really? Wait, tell me this because I don't work in higher ed. So
well,
what is
like
higher ed?
bring your own device. Like
Oh, so they're kind of like getting rid of computer labs and just assuming that students have their own devices to
right,
bring. Yeah.
right. But and I know the last time we talked, we also talked about like the immersive reader. Now, I gotta say,
Mm,
what the hell? I mean, it's so hard to get a hold of now. Like, and they've modified it so much.
yeah.
I'm like, why, Microsoft? Why?
Yeah, if you had such a good thing, like
Like, why are you fixing something that's not
yeah,
broken?
I'm with you. Or
Like,
make it hard to access or find.
yes.
Yeah.
Like how the hell do you get to it now?
Mhm. I
But
agree. I've had
yeah.
to dig for it, and it depends on the tool you're in. Like they
Okay.
say it's in Teams,
Oh,
but
is it?
well, that's what the so yes, and for one, it depends on what version of Teams you're using. If you're using the
Oh,
web or the desktop, that's part of the problem too.
oh, I
And then you
see.
really kind of have to like dig for it and know what you're looking for in
Oh
order to
my
find
word.
it,
Oh
which is the
wow.
downfall. And then in like Edge, the Microsoft Edge browser, they say
Yeah.
it's in there, and it is kind of, but it's not called immersive reader, it's called read aloud. So
Oh,
you have
read
to like,
aloud.
yeah, you have to highlight text, right click, hit read aloud, and
Uh,
then it's a limited version of immersive reader. It doesn't
yeah.
have all the bells and whistles. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's another problem is it's not somebody told me once about Microsoft. I have a love-hate relationship with Microsoft. Somebody said once
Likewise.
that they play the it depends game. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're so right. Because everything in Microsoft world is it depends. Well, does Teams have immersive reader? Well, it depends. If you're in the web version or the desktop version, if you're in the Windows version or the Mac version, right?
Right.
Versus everything in Google is web based. So it doesn't depend because it's the same on every single device and
I
every web browser that you're using. It's
yes,
the
that
same.
is crazy. And I don't know, they said that there were some features that were not being used, so they phased some of that out. But I mean, you still have, like you said, the read aloud and your text size and your backgrounds, but like the grammar tools, I was a little bummed that they took some of that out.
Yeah.
Where you used to be able to highlight adjectives, verbs,
Yeah.
adverbs, nouns, and then
Oh, that's
also
not in there anymore? They took that out?
at least, or if they haven't, I was not able to find it.
Oh,
Maybe it's
sad.
there
Hold
that
on.
I don't know. But like, is the picture dictionary still there?
Hold on. I'm going to look. I'm going to open up a Word document here. Let's see. I'm guessing this is also it depends game. So I use a Mac, so I'm going to be in Word for Mac.
Okay.
So let's see if Word for Mac has it. And also, it depends on what version of Office you're using too. Hold on, let's see. View immersive. Oh, I don't have any text. That would help. Hold on. Let me just put some gibberish here. Okay, view. It's under the view tab, by the way, in
Okay.
Word.
Okay. It's under the view tab.
Oh, you're right. I don't have, it's like very limited. I no longer have the syllables, the highlighting verbs. Yeah, I have, I can change the column width, I can change the color, the text spacing, the syllables, and I can read aloud. That's it. All of the rest of it is gone.
Because
Wow, what a bummer. Why drives me crazy when products take away features, especially
yes,
features that people love and like and use.
yes, yes, yes. Agreed. Oh my
Dang.
word.
Well, that's disappointing, but there are lots of other really great accessibility tools other than Immersive Reader.
Yeah,
If
there
you're
are.
if you're on a Google ecosystem, Everways Read and Write tool is
Okay.
very similar to Immersive Reader. It
Okay.
gives you a toolbar and it has things like picture dictionary and read aloud and highlighting and like all of the things. It is, I always get this backwards. It's free for teachers,
Okay.
but you have to pay for students. So teachers can go download it, try it, make sure they like it, and then you can purchase it for student
Okay.
accounts.
So it may come out like the teacher's budget, or if a school system or school district purchases it, that
Which
can
is
also.
ideal. So
Right, that
again,
is the
so
ideal thing.
every student has it and it's not stigmatizing. And that's the great part about tools like Read and Write is because it everybody has it on their Google Docs as an option. Everybody can use it. I don't have to have an IEP to be able to use the picture dictionary.
Right.
Right? Like everybody has it. It's not stigmatizing.
So that tool, so do you have to go to the Chrome Web Store? Because I know that with Google, you do have to get extensions on a
I
lot, or is that
believe
okay?
so.
I mean, that's not a big
Uh,
deal
hold
because I
on, let
mean,
me look here.
plugins are not a big deal. Some people found them to be a little cumbersome, and I'm like, why? That's not, yeah, it doesn't take long to download one.
Yeah.
There,
And if you're a Google school, Google Workspace's admin side makes it
right,
so easy to
right.
push out things like this to, all the students and the teachers or specific groups of students. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the way it still works. I haven't done that side of it in a while, but yeah, it says it's available for Windows, Mac, Google Chrome, Edge, iPad, iPhone, Android.
Okay, okay. So pretty
Teachers
much
and
most
students
of
can
them.
use it on their laptop, tablet, phone, or Chromebook. So
Oh, cool.
all of the above.
Okay.
Okay.
So now, in our last episode, I think you touched on this. You said that some teachers are kind of unaware of what accessibility tools exist. And I recently had lunch with an old friend. So he works in the university in my hometown, and they recently made the switch to Canvas from Moodle. So now
Mm,
they are trying to get through the accessibility compliance. So Canvas has the accessibility checker.
yep.
And the goal is to see that you don't have like any red marks, whenever you're doing your accessibility runs, or you want to keep like your warnings. I guess their goal is they want to keep the warnings that they get like green or, you know, yellow or amber in this case. And, it got me thinking, and I even told him, I don't know if a perfect score in accessibility ever really happens. I do think that if you can
Mm,
get 80%, you're probably in good hands.
totally. I would agree with that. It's hard and depends on what level of accessibility you're trying to hit. So a few things there. I got a few thoughts for you.
All right.
So there's a thing called WCAG, or some people say YCAG. It's WCAG.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so that these are basically like the standards for websites for accessibility. And we're currently at the 2.1 level. And that's what the new ADA law that came into play this April,
Yes.
it's all about this, right?
And
So it
that's for
moved
the
it up to
larger
2.1
districts,
for the
right?
larger district. Yep, smaller districts under 50,000 are next
Yeah,
April.
yeah, next year.
Yep.
April 26th to be exact.
Oh, look at you just pulling that date out of your mind. Nice work. So, yes. So, it's all about this. It's all about the web accessibility guidelines. Anything that's a website, they have the 2.1 guidelines. They have A, double A, and triple A.
Mhm.
And the new ADA compliance says you have to hit double A. Okay. So,
Right.
this means things like your pictures have to have alt text behind them, your videos have to have captions, but AAA takes it to a whole nother level and says things like not only do your videos have to have captions, but they also have to have a live translator, or not a live translator, but a translator doing ASL. That's what AAA says,
Oh
right?
my word.
Yeah, it's pretty intense. Like it really ups the game in terms of accessibility. But
Yeah.
the what I tell people is aim for double A. Try to hit those double A standards. Have captions, have alt text. The other one is color contrast. Very few people think about this. I don't remember if it was you and I had talked about this
I
or
think we
somebody else.
did.
Yeah, about how like I am just appalled at the number of graphic designers I've worked with that have no idea about color contrast and
Right.
accessibility.
Mhm.
So the double A standards have certain, like you have to hit, it's like a 4-to-1 ratio or something like that for color contrast, meaning what color text is on what color background. White on black, black on white, that's the highest contrast that you can get.
Okay.
There is a really great tool by WebAIM, so WEBAIM.
Yeah, I've heard of webbing.
Yep, webaim.org. If you go to that website, they have a tool called the color contrast checker. It's amazing. It will tell you, and it has even has a little what do they call it? Like an eyedropper tool where you can click it and then you can just find wherever the color is and click the color and it pulls the RGB code for the color. It'll tell you if you've hit double A and triple A for color contrast. And I always tell people aim for double A. Triple A is really hard to hit, especially
Yeah.
when you're trying to make, and here, this is always a rub with like graphic designers and like marketing people. Sometimes the more you make something visually appealing, the less accessible it gets. So
Right.
sometimes when you have like these really crazy cool color schemes, they're not necessarily hitting triple A. You can get them to hit double A, although I've seen a lot of color schemes out there that also don't hit double A,
Right.
or they're not putting the right color text over other color text. So, for example, my Lindy Hawk brand colors, I have two shades of purple, a dark blue, and kind of a teal color. Oh, and like a light gold
Right.
color and a light blue color. Okay. If I put white text has to be with the purples, the blues, and the teal. Black text has to be over the light blue and the light gold color
Okay.
because a white on the light gold is not high enough contrast. You can't see the words, right?
Right.
But also, a black text on a dark purple is
Well,
not
yeah,
high
you
enough
can't see that
contrast. You
either.
can't see the words. Yeah. So that's an example of like checking contrast. So, what I tell teachers, they tend to get overwhelmed by this. And I'm like, this is what you do. You have a style guide, which is very common at the higher ed level to have like a style guide that says, we're going to use these colors, these fonts. This is what our courses are going to look like, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
If your education institution has a style guide, awesome. Start with that, but also have a style guide for your classroom and have like your own classroom color scheme that you have checked for color contrast, because then you don't have to check it every single time. Like, you know that these colors work, right? And then you can use those colors in your slide decks or your handouts, whatever it is that you're creating.
Right.
You can just kind of you. And the other thing it does is it creates consistency and gives your students a consistent visual cue. Like when they log into your Canvas course or into your Google Classroom, they know that they're in Mrs. Hockenberry's class when they see the purples and the
Right.
teals and the blue color, right? Because that's like my color scheme.
Okay. And one of the last things at the university I was working on, it was an accessibility checklist. Now, admittedly, it was kind of inspired by Quality Matters, but color was something that I did kind of bring up in that. Let me see if I, yeah, here it is.
Oh, while you're looking for it, I was also going to tell you if you're a Canvas user,
Okay.
they do have a bit of an accessibility checker built in now, but there's
Yes.
also a group called City Labs. It's CIDILABS.
Mm-hmm.
And they literally built accessibility stuff to integrate into Canvas. Like that's the whole purpose of
Mm-hmm.
their tools. So it kind of takes the idea of like accessibility checkers to a whole
To
nother
a whole
level
nother
if
level.
you're, yeah, but specifically for Canvas if you're a Canvas
Mm-hmm.
user.
Yeah. So this was the list that I was working on,
Ah,
and yeah, like,
nice.
and those are the UT Tyler, those are the brand colors, this dark orange and this dark blue here.
Ah,
So yeah, so
yep,
let me see one I had for yeah, color. Oh yeah, so yeah, and I also had an annotation on what that meant. So like colors utilized, they should be readable by all. So like black background with white text is, a bit better than a black but a dark blue. And I
yep,
and I think I said something about, yeah, I did. So proceed with caution when using reds and greens.
yeah.
Because I know with red, typically we think of
Also
red as like,
yellow,
yeah, yellow.
yellows, oranges, kind of.
Yeah, it depends.
Yellows is one of the biggest color contrast issues that I see.
Yeah. Yeah, unless it's on. Okay, now if you're using a black background
Black is okay.
with yellow
Yep.
text or vice versa, you'll be able to see that. But like a a white
Yeah.
background or even
White
a,
text on yellow background or vice versa
yeah,
does not work.
yeah, you're not gonna be able to get that. And then I did
Yeah.
talk a bit about like the tables, so that was a
Nice.
check.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, this is perfect. This is very
Hmm.
similar to what I have in like my style guide
Hmm.
where it specifies, I have to have black text on these colors and white text on these colors or
Hmm.
whatever. Yeah, that's exactly what you need.
Yeah, and then as far as videos, even if your video didn't have captions, I mean, if you have a transcript, I mean, and even with that, now I will say like Canvas Studio, you can generate a transcript, and I think they said it's like 85% accurate.
Oh,
But
okay.
I did find that like even afterwards, I would go in and I would edit some of that text, because
Yeah,
I used to help faculty, with their text in their videos because you have students in college that do have disabilities. It may be a hearing issue, it could be
absolutely.
dyslexia, it could be et cetera, et cetera.
Now, let's talk about transcripts for a second because
Sure.
this is a hot button topic, especially now with AI. AI is making the ability to create a transcript and create captions and or captions. You should have both ideally in my opinion,
Right.
so much faster and easier. But I did a session a couple summers ago on all about like making learning materials accessible and inclusive. And this was a hot button topic about whether, especially among the higher ed people, it was higher ed and K 12, the higher ed people in the group. I say, like, exactly what you said. If you get 80% close enough,
Right.
that is that is way better 80% accuracy for captions than having nothing,
Right.
which is the other alternative, right? Is
Right.
like just not doing it. The higher ed people were kind of like, oh man, no, like we we're kind of under the microscope to make sure that the transcripts are completely accurate at the higher ed level. And man, that's tricky. The difference though is higher ed typically has instructional designers or people that support the professors making the courses. K-12 does not have that,
Right. And
like, at
honestly,
all. So
and
it's all on the teacher.
yeah.
And, so if AI can generate a transcript that's 80% accurate
Hmm.
and then turn that into captions, like, to me, that's a win.
Right. And even in K through 12, even if they have them, they're typically not on site. They're typically in an administrative hub somewhere, you know?
Yeah.
So,
This the other thing that's interesting about AI transcripts and captions is I've been on some webinars and trainings recently where that has been the example to tell people that AI is not always accurate. Is there like, have you ever looked at YouTube captions nowadays, like, and seen that they're not completely accurate? Well,
right.
that's because, 90% of YouTube videos use AI to generate the captions, and AI is not always accurate. I'm like,
No, they're not.
okay, all
They're
right.
not.
But
AI is not.
no, but if you ever back in the day before we had the auto transcript caption feature in YouTube, if you ever tried to add captions to a video on YouTube before I did,
Okay.
it was a nightmare. It took forever.
Forever.
I finally turned the little trick that I figured out that I would always share with teachers is I would open either a Word document or a Google Doc and turn on the speech to text feature in those and run it in the background while playing the video. And then the speech to text would pick up the transcript because otherwise you were literally typing out
And
the
pausing
captions
and
and
it,
pausing
yes.
constantly. And it took forever, hence why the majority of people, especially the majority of teachers, didn't do it. So that's another reason why I'm like, hey, people, 80% accuracy with AI transcripts and captions, way better than we used to have. Go for
Right.
it.
Yeah. That's how I feel. I say that, meet that 80% mark. Because, I mean, think about it like this. You think about quality matters in online learning and hybrid learning, the gold standard. Typically, well, no, to get the course to be QM certified, the goal is 85 points, including all the essential
Okay.
standards. So, I say if you can, let's say you do have a rubric of 100. I say, look, if you can get 80 points, I say you've got it made.
Yep.
If you can get
Agreed.
more than that, that's better. But look, if you can get that 80%,
Progress over perfection,
yes,
100%. When it comes to accessibility, 100%. It's way better to try something and maybe have it not be perfect than not do it at all.
right,
Because it could literally be the difference between a student being able to access your content, access your course, get a versus a D in your course. So
right,
just do it. It doesn't have to be perfect.
and right. And honestly, does a perfect score in accessibility ever really happen?
I highly doubt it.
Right. I can't. I can't think of it. I would say unlikely.
Unlikely. I mean, you could go to all of my stuff right now, my website. I try really hard to make sure I have color contrast, to make sure I have alt text, to make sure I have tags for screen readers, my slides too. I try really hard to make sure they're accessible. Or the other thing I've started to do is here's a good tip for teachers. I was spending so much stinking time because I do a lot of slide building. I tease sometimes that my headstone is going to be like died from making too many slides because I spent so much
Right.
time making slides.
Right.
And it's already time consuming. And then add on to it having to add alt text to every image in your slide and make sure your headings are set right so that it can be read by a screen reader, all that stuff, right? I was
Right.
like, oh my gosh, I was stressing over it. It was taking so much time. So what I started to do instead of giving them the slides, because the slides only need to be accessible if you're giving it to them as the resource, as the takeaway resource.
Right.
Instead, now I write like a blog post and or I create like a 1 or 2 page summary that's like a printable
Right.
of the information. And I give them the blog post, which may or may not have that. I call it an infographic on it, depending upon the topic, so that they it basically summarizes everything in one place or in one page or one back and front and back page, right? That they would get in flipping through 50 different slides. Because, like, really, who wants to flip through 50 different slides to figure out the gist of the conversation or go back and find that she said this on slide 25? It's honestly not the greatest learning experience, in my opinion.
Right.
So instead, I give them like a blog post. Or sometimes I'll even do like a blog post and a podcast episode on it, right? So
Yeah.
again, that multiple means of representation, they get it in multiple ways. If
Right.
you are a person that likes to print things out, here's your printable one pager on
Right.
top of
Like a one-page infographic, maybe
it.
that could
Yep.
be converted into a PDF format.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, if you go to my website, you'll see, if you go to my blog on my website, not everyone, but if you click through a few blogs, you'll find if you scroll to the bottom of the blog, several of them have where it says, here you can download a summary of this in a one, or it's usually 1 or 2 pages. I have one that's really, really long. It's like 4 pages, but it's only because it's like a very specific maker learning activity that has a lot of instructions. So it ended up
Right.
being a lot longer. Everything else is like a 1 or 2 pager. And the other thing I do too is I will print that out and hand it out during my trainings with the teachers. So then they have it in front of them. And again, they're not like frantically taking notes or frantically taking pictures of my slides or asking if they can have the slides or whatever. They've got it's all in front of them. They can take notes on the infographic if they want. If they're not a
Hmm.
paper person, then they don't have to touch it, but at least they
Right.
have that other option there.
Right. So I guess I'm well. So I mean, I think those are solid ideas. But I guess my question is, as we see districts doing this, and sometimes it could be for the motive of getting, kids reading again, but also there could be like budget constraints. I- What do you think the biggest challenge is, other than just not knowing what's out there, that could be that could be delaying a district from operating within, on a budget,
Oh, like
operating
when
at
it comes
text.
to
Yeah, to
when it comes to
accessibility.
accessibility in
Yeah,
particular, I think you don't know what you don't know is number one. And
right,
number two is time. The
right,
time, like the example of the captions on the video is a
right,
perfect example of, teachers barely have an hour a day of prep time,
right,
right?
right,
That's barely enough time to make a video, let alone like add the captions to the video to make sure it's accessible or put your information in for next week in Canvas, let alone go and click the accessibility checker. And then I think even with the accessibility checker, the majority of educators probably don't know what it means. I had that problem with Microsoft's accessibility checker. So Microsoft has an accessibility checker for PowerPoint and
yeah,
Word
they do.
and Sway. I don't even know if Sway still exists. Does
Yeah,
Sway still
does it?
exist?
Yeah, let me look. I'm gonna
Good
look right
question.
now.
Here, let me look. I said that, and I'm like, I haven't used it in so long.
Yeah, let's see,
Oh no, it still
Microsoft.
exists. So Sway has it as well. They have an accessibility checker where it will tell you, and it breaks it into different categories. It tells you things that are absolute errors that need to be fixed, and then it tells you things that are like nice to fix type stuff.
Yeah,
It's so hard to interpret. Would do whole trainings just helping teachers interpret what the accessibility checker was telling them because it'll like PowerPoint, it'll say, you're missing alt text. They're like, what's alt text? The
right,
majority of teachers
right,
don't know what alt text is. Like, you don't learn that stuff in your teacher prep program as a K
right,
12 teacher.
right. You really don't.
No, you don't. I didn't. I had one class called exceptional needs in my whole bachelor's and master's degrees in education. I have 2 education degrees. I had one class called exceptional needs where we learned about different learning disabilities and such. And that was it. And that was bare bones basics, let alone learning about accessibility. I had one class that was an educational technology class. And I always give Montana State University credit for this because in the early 2000s, the fact that we even had a class called educational technology was pretty up and coming. But all we did was build a Netscape site the entire semester. That's what we did. And we never once talked about web accessibility while building that Netscape
Right.
site. And if you've never heard of Netscape, it doesn't exist anymore. It's basically a way, it was it a
Yeah.
web browser? It was a way to build websites. And I think it was
Right.
also a web browser. So we
Right.
basically built a web quest
Mm-hmm.
in Netscape was the whole semester of this educational technology course. And not once did we talk about web accessibility. Not
Right.
once.
And you probably didn't talk much about headings and charts either and tables.
Oh, no, not at all. Not at all. And I have a master's degree in educational technology. So I got my bachelor's in the early 2000s. I got my master's, I finished in 2015, I think. So what is that? That's only 11 years ago. And it literally, I have it on the wall right here. It says I have a master's degree in educational technology. And actually, I have two. I have a graduate certificate in technology integration,
Okay.
and not a single course that I took in that degree 11 years ago talked about accessibility
Right.
with technology. Everything I know about color contrast and WCAG and YCAG is all just from my experience doing what I do for a living,
Right.
going to professional development trainings, um, YouTube, TikTok. Uh, I do some instructional design work. I used to do some curriculum design work, so I learned a lot from that.
Right.
But yeah, I even took one of the courses we had to take for my master's degree was called instructional design. We had to do a whole instructional design project. And granted, this was 11, more than 11 years ago. I'm trying to think. I don't remember anything in that course that was about making your instructional design courses accessible.
Right.
It was all about the ADDIE process. If you're not familiar with that, it's like the whole process you go through as an instructional designer. It was all about that. Nothing about like what happens when what you created isn't accessible by 20% of the people that need
Right.
to access it.
Right. And then I think that that's something that you learn as you go, as you encounter these students, you learn about their specific needs, their specific challenges. So it's really there's a lot of trial and error, okay? And
Yeah.
you're gonna
Yeah.
learn it as you go. So there are some things honestly I don't know if they really can truly prep you for.
Yeah, for sure. I would say that, but there are definitely things that you
Some
could be
that
prepped for as a
will,
teacher.
yeah, that are common, that are certainly more
Yeah.
common.
Like
So yeah,
knowing what WCAG standards are and knowing the importance of captions on videos, knowing what alt text is, knowing about color contrast, like those are kind of the bare bones basics of accessibility. I'm going to open up, I have a presentation I do all about this
okay,
that has, let me see if I can find it real quick. Kind of like what I consider to be the essentials of accessibility
right,
for teachers. And actually, one of the things I do in this session is I define what's the difference between accessibility and inclusivity, because there is a difference. Accessibility is the bare bones, what's absolutely necessary
right,
for someone to access. Inclusivity means that you want to.
okay,
So accessibility means you can, inclusivity means that you want to. So I make sure to define that because there are things that you can do as a teacher that aren't necessarily a accessibility guideline or WCAG guideline or would show up in an accessibility checker, but really make a difference for students, if that makes sense.
right.
Um, yeah, I was just going to click through this and see. there's anything I didn't mention. We talk a lot about UDL, Universal Design for Learning, consistency and clarity. Okay, that's an example of, oh, here's a perfect example. I told you that if you have a color scheme for
Yeah.
your course, that is an accessibility factor when it comes to color contrast, right?
Hmm.
But I told you it's a benefit to have a color scheme for your course because it provides a consistent visual cue. That's not accessibility. That's an inclusivity item that you can do, right? To
Okay.
provide consistency to your learners that creates routine, right?
Right.
So that's an example of that. Color contrast. Oh, font. We haven't talked about font. I have big feelings about font.
All right. Let's hear it.
Okay, all right. So I know I'm going to make some people mad here, especially teachers. I always
Okay.
do when I say this.
All
But
right.
I say multiple things that potentially make people mad about font.
Okay.
Number one thing about font, you only need one. You only need one. You maybe two. If you want to have a second font that is a little bit that you use as like a design element, you'll notice if you go to my website, I do have a second font I use very sparingly for a little bit of flair to make things look pretty. Actually, me and my web designer went round and round about this because I was like, no, I only want one font. And she's like, but I want to add this really fun handwriting looking font because it looks cool because it matches your education brand. And finally, I was like,
Right.
okay, we can do it, but we're going to use it very, very sparingly. Right. And, or you might have one font that you use for like your headings and another for the body. Okay. If you have more than two fonts that you're using, no, you should never have more than two fonts. So that's number one. Number two thing about font is the type of font really does matter. There are three main types of font. You have a sans serif font, a serif font, and a decorative font. A serif font has little feet on the bottom of the letters.
Okay.
That's what serif is. So Times New Roman used to be the standard font in like Microsoft Word. That is a serif font. A sans serif font does not have the little serif feet at the bottom. Hence, sans means no, right? No
Right.
serifs.
Right.
So Open Sans is an example of a sans serif. Montserrat is one. My brand font I use is called ITC Avant Garde. Sounds very fancy and special. Those are all examples of sans serif fonts. Sans serif fonts are what you should use because there is research and studies out there that shows that the serif fonts with those little feet are a lot harder for people with dyslexia to read because the little feet make the words smush together even more.
Oh, really?
Hmm.
Now that
So
I
I
did
am
not
like,
know.
so I am like a advocate for just pick a sans serif font, use a sans serif font, and highly decorative fonts are almost always not accessible. So if
So
you have like
like,
a really like scripty cursive like
oh yeah.
decorative font,
Hmm.
very not accessible. Now, here's the trick though. Like I said, sometimes when you make things look pretty, like you'll see those cursive fonts in a lot of like graphic design and websites and flyers
Hmm.
because they look cool, right? But they're not
Right.
very accessible. The trade-off is if you really feel like you need to add a decorative font, then make sure to have an accessible text version of whatever it is, right? So if you've got like a printable handout, actually, I do this with my infographics. I sometimes, they look cool and pretty and they're laid out nice, but then I have a version that's just in a Google Doc that is literally just the text and only the text. So if somebody needs to use a screen reader or whatever, they don't need to use it. Also, I've had people tell me that italics are hard to read for a lot of people.
Hmm.
So I used to be a really big italics user because I would use it as a way to the point when I wrote my book, the first thing my editor told me was you really like to use italics
Yeah,
because I
like
would
for
use it as like,
emphasis. Yeah.
yeah, for emphasis and like to show kind of like the way that I talk. I'm a very expressive talker, so I
Right.
feel like I need to put that out in my writing. So I've tried to get away from italics. I still use them some, but I
Yeah.
do not. I use them very, very sparingly.
I
So,
wonder if you do the italic and bold, if that would be a little
mm,
easier to read.
I don't know.
If
And
you
I don't know if there's any research or studies about italics. I've just had people tell me that they have a hard time reading
hmm,
italics, which to me is evidence enough to use it sparingly. That makes sense. Also, another note on font is I always tell people, I'm like, pick tools. And here's the problem is there's very few tools that do this. Immersive Reader is one tool that allows the user to customize the font. So, because for example, like I told you, my husband loves Open Dyslexic Font. It totally changes his life. It helps him read so much faster, so much easier. I hate it. I do not like it whatsoever. Like it makes me read slower, to be quite honest. I'm a really fast reader. I'm actually
mhm.
looking at a slide that has it on it right now, and it almost like hurts my eyeballs. So that's a perfect example of if tech tools would allow the user to customize the font like Kindle does and Immersive Reader does, it would make everybody's life so much better. It would make teachers' lives so much better.
Mhm.
There you go. There's my soapbox about fonts.
All right. So, well, you know,
I know
to,
I made some teacher mad. I had a teacher once who their school had bought brand new interactive whiteboards. I won't say the brand.
okay, fair
And
enough.
I was in the school helping them with it,
Kind of
with
set them
these
up.
new interactive whiteboards. Not set them up, but like help the teacher make sure everything was working, it was using it right, and teaching them how to use it and all the things. And this one teacher used a Mac and she used a custom font on her Mac for
Oh, wow.
everything. So, like,
Oh,
all of her slides were in this custom font and none of it transferred. And by the way, the custom font was like not a highly decorative font, but I would consider it slightly decorative, like in between like a Comic Sans and a highly decorative font.
yeah.
So it wasn't very accessible to start off with, okay? That font would not transfer to the interactive whiteboard. Like if
Damn.
she was just screen sharing her slides that were on her Mac, it would, but the whole point of the interactive whiteboard was like, hey, you can load your slides on here and then you can use like the annotation tool over the top of the whiteboard and the highlighter and all this stuff. So when she tried to do
Oh,
that, the custom font would not transfer and she was livid. And
no. Oh,
I was
my
like,
word.
this is a perfect example of why to never use a custom font.
And,
Pick,
to be honest with you, unfortunately, I'm not surprised. I even think about the digital whiteboards like Microsoft's own whiteboard or you have Figma. The fonts are kind of limited.
yes, yes. So pick a font that's a standard font. Open Sans tends to be a really good one. It's a sans serif. It's in everything now. So it's in a Google Doc. It's in a Microsoft Office files. It's in all the things, right? Like you can find it everywhere. Pick one of those types of fonts that are the really common fonts that you find everywhere, not Times New Roman, please. There's a reason that Microsoft got rid of it as the standard font in
I
Microsoft.
typically use the Arial font.
Arial. Arial is a great
That's
Arial is a sans serif font
that's
that is
what
in
I typically
everything.
gravitate towards,
Yep.
whether it's
And it's the
Arial
default
plain
in Microsoft now. Yep. So
or yeah,
just use an Arial
yeah.
and like stick to it. It's
So the
sans serif. It's
plain, the
easy for people to
narrow,
read. It
the black.
transfers everywhere. You're not going to have issues where like if you move your Google Slides is the worst for fonts because you can't upload custom fonts. So like you get what's in Google Slides and
Right.
that's it. So like sometimes people will use some crazy custom font in PowerPoint and then they'll try to transfer their slides from PowerPoint to Google
To the
Slides
slides,
and it
yeah.
messes up their slides because it has to transfer the font, the formatting's all off. It's a nightmare. So as I tell people, just stay away from custom fonts. It really is not worth it. I promise you.
But yeah, stick with Arial or
From an
even
instructional design
yes,
perspective, it's not worth it. Just use the Arial.
or even what's the other one? Tahoma. That one?
Tahoma. Yep,
Yeah.
that's probably another one.
Yeah.
I always use Google Slides as the example because it is so limited with font. So go to slides.google.com and pick a font. I'm opening it right now. Pick a font. No, I don't want to generate. That is in here. So here. Yep, Arial is number one. It's the default. Roboto is another one that's pretty common. Montserrat. I know I'm not pronouncing some of these right.
Right,
Graphic designers are gonna judge me. Oh, Calibri. That's another one. It's a sans serif. That's kind of in everything. Open Sans. I mentioned that one. Yeah, there's 4 or 5 for you right there
right,
that are really good sans serif fonts, aren't decorative, easy for people to read.
right,
Done.
right. Done. Problem solved. Look, like those fancier fonts, I mean, it's fine if you're trying to create like a flyer or a party invitation, but like, yeah, when it comes to like professional documents or even like you say PowerPoints, just
Yep.
stick with the simplistic
I
fonts.
also say this from personal experience because I told you I use this ITC Avant Garde. Only reason I use it is because it was what was used in my book. And then I just kept going with it as like my style guide font and it got out of control. And I wish I would have just used like Arial Open Sans, like called it good, been done. So I'm saying this to you with love and from personal experience.
Yes, that is wow, yeah. That's crazy. But yeah, I've always preferred Arial over Times New Roman, to be honest with you. I just, like that font better anyway. And like
Almost
I said,
everybody does. That's why they
yeah.
changed it.
And in Arial, whether it's the narrow, whether it's the plain, whether it's the Arial black, I just tend to gravitate towards those anyway.
Yep. And also, when in doubt, I tell people do black font on white or white font on black.
Yeah,
You don't need to get all fancy smancy and colors and all of the things. Like, if you do white on black or black on white, you know that it's going to be the highest contrast that you can possibly get. Black
right.
and white are on 2 opposite diagonals of the RGB, whatever it's called,
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, red, green, blue. Yeah, that color. Yes. Yeah, I don't know the exact, terminology right off the
Yeah,
top
I'm
of my
not,
head
you can
right
tell I'm
now,
not a
but yeah.
graphic designer. I don't know what that's called.
But yeah.
I just play one on TV. No.
But right. And you know what? So far, I guess you could say it served you well.
For sure, for sure. Let's see. What I'm just looking through if there's anything else in my presentation. Oh, we haven't talked about styles and headings
Okay.
yet. This is a big one. So this means a lot of people when I say this, I don't even know what that means. So when you're in a Google Doc or a Microsoft Word document, any word
Mm,
processing program has what's
yeah.
called styles and headings. They might call it styles, they might call it headings, they might call it both. And it's the place that you go where, like, say you highlight your title and you choose title and it changes the formatting for you. And then let's say that I was just writing a blog post earlier today and I had the heading of the first section, right? So I clicked it and I chose heading 1. Then I had the body, so I clicked it and I made sure I chose body. That's the styles and the headings. A lot of people think that that's just for formatting purposes. In other words, to just make the text look different. So, like your title is going to be centered in larger text, your
Right.
heading is going to be left aligned in larger text than your body text. That is important for consistency. And I highly recommend using styles and headings for that purpose. But the more important thing that people don't know is that's absolutely essential for people that use screen readers. Because what it does is never just say you want to have like a heading or a title. A lot of people will just highlight the text and they'll be like, okay, I'm going to change it from 12-point font to 16-point font and I'm going to center it because it's a title. That does nothing other than the look. If you change the style to be title or heading 1 or heading 2 or heading 3, it's creating a table of contents in the background, essentially. And now with Google Docs, it actually puts that over on the left. So you
Oh
can
wow.
see it and you can navigate your Google Doc really easily, which I like because it's really teaching people how to use those headings and styles. So if you are using a screen reader and you have a document that is 10 pages long, if you were to just format your headings, that person is going to have to scroll through 10 pages in order to find the section that they want to go back and reference. If
Right.
you've used the styles and the headings, they can go into the quote unquote table of contents on their screen reader and say, take me to the section titled whatever it
X.
is.
Right.
Why to only use one font
Hmm.
in your accessibility guide or whatever it is. So headings and styles essential in terms of they're going to save you time and create consistency with your formatting, but also essential from an accessibility standpoint
Right.
in the background. It also saves you, did I say that? It saves you time. That's another thing. Essential for
Yeah.
screen readers. Um, templates. I'm a big fan of templates. I talked a little about like style guides,
Yeah.
really important, but templates are also important because they automate your color scheme, the color contrast, the font, the structure. They create consistency. They save
Right.
you time as a teacher and make sure that you're making things consistent and accessible. We talked about style guides, we talked about colors. If oh, here's a good tip. If you want to create, say, like a color scheme for your class, sometimes I will have teachers that will use like their school colors.
Yeah.
Great, if you want to do that. But if you want something a little bit more identifiable to you specifically, there's a ton of tools out there that will help you create really cool color schemes. Canva has a tool called Colors, it's called Canva Colors. Canva, just in general, is really great about helping you create color schemes.
Yeah.
Adobe has a tool called Adobe Color. There's also a tool called Coolors. So it's colors with two O's,
Okay.
Coolors.
Hmm.
Those are all great tools for creating um, color schemes. We talked about captions. We talked about YouTube auto captions. There's also some tools like ScreenPal, Padlet, where now when you upload your video, Padlet is a great one for this. If it doesn't have captions, the video, it automatically adds the captions for you. So
Oh,
again,
nice.
it's using AI in the background. So that's a really good tip. ScreenPal is really great. It has a ton of that's for actually ScreenPal's for creating videos.
Yeah.
They have a lot of I actually did a webinar for them earlier today.
Do they
They have a lot
still?
of AI features and like auto
Oh,
generated text and auto generated captions.
I have to try some of those out. Like I remember when ScreenPad was known as Screencast-O-Matic. Do they
Yes.
still have, like, of the free version? Do they still have that 15-minute limit, or has that been taken out and you can kind of record a
Ooh,
little longer?
I think that's a good question. I have an upgraded account, and so I think you can do like 10 minutes of video at a time.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that. I think there is a limit on the free version of the length of the video, but I tell teachers it doesn't matter because your video shouldn't be any more than like 3 or 4 minutes anyway. So, in terms of like research and best practices, but here's the great thing about ScreenPal,
Hmm.
even their free account has unlimited cloud storage.
Okay.
So you can store all of your videos on there. I do think it limits you on the free version, but you can
Yeah.
store all your
And
videos in there, which is like
if your
amazing.
videos are going to be longer than that, you probably need to put timestamps on.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly. Or even better though, honestly, timestamps, yes. Even better, just split it into multiple videos and create a playlist.
Yeah, you could do that too.
That's what I tell teachers. I'm like, if your video is more than 3 or 4 minutes, I want you to split it. Say it's going to be like 8 minutes, split it into two videos and then create a YouTube playlist that has the order that the videos are watched. Your students are much more apt to watch two 4-minute videos than one 8-minute video. And it makes it way easier for them to go back and find information that they want to go back and reference after they watch it the first time if you have smaller, shorter videos.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was one thing. And there was a tool that Microsoft had one time. It was called Microsoft Stream. Is that tool
Oh,
still?
yeah.
Yeah,
I
is
think
it
they still
still?
have that.
Oh, they still
Yeah.
have it? Yes.
I'm pretty sure. I don't do much with Microsoft anymore, but I'm pretty sure they still have Stream.
That was a nice little tool.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's
Yeah.
really nice if you are creating videos that are only shared within your like
Yeah, like
organization.
yes. Yeah, like within your network. Yeah.
Yep. It creates them a lot. It's a lot more private than like posting them on YouTube.
Right, right.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, here's another one. I'm going through my presentation. I'm like, wait, I told you I could talk for hours about accessibility.
Oh,
I think
totally.
this is the last one, but this one's important. I see this all the time. And it's one of those things, once you see it, you can't unsee it. Accessible links. So this means when you have text and then you hyperlink part of the text to go to like a website or a video or something, right?
Yes.
There's rules around that. And by the way, that's what you should do. You number one, you should never paste a long URL into anything
So really
because of
hyperlink will
people.
work.
Yep, because of people with screen readers. Think about it. If you like right now, I'm looking at I have a this is a Canva slide deck. It's
Yeah.
a really long URL that has like 20 characters of random numbers and letters. If I were to just paste this into a document and give it to my students, and I have somebody using a screen reader, that screen reader will literally read
Uh
canva.com/DESIGN /capital D, capital A, capital G, capital K, lowercase s, lowercase. I'm literally reading a real life
yes.
URL right now.
Yeah.
You get the idea. Terrible, like drive somebody crazy. So that's why you should always hyperlink text. Okay. So that's number one. Number two is you want to make sure that the text that you're hyperlinking is accessible. You don't want it to be uninformative, meaning it doesn't tell you what you're going to find when you go to the link, but you also don't want it to be overly detailed. So here's an exact example I have from my book, A Teacher's Guide to Online Learning. An example of accessible link text is explore the UDL guidelines for assistance implementing the framework. UDL guidelines is what is hyperlinked. That takes you to, you guessed it, the UDL guidelines. So it's informative. It tells you exactly what you're going to find when you click that hyperlink.
Hmm.
Uninformative example is click here for the UDL guidelines and only click here is highlighted or hyperlinked. This is what I see all of the time. You never ever want to hyperlink something that says like click here or here or there's another one that I see a lot that's like
This
find it here.
okay, I'll admit that I'm guilty of that, like in emails. I will admit that I've been guilty about that. And even like that checklist that I had, that I was building at the last university I was at, I'll admit that there was one there was one criteria that I put in there about information about the accessibility services office, to the campus. And I said, okay, you can also include like this link. And I'll admit, yeah, it was just the website because
Yeah,
I've
click
looked
here to
at the,
go.
yeah, because because for a while the link that I was able to find, I had to hunt that link down because there was an there was a older course review tool that we had, and one thing I did notice is that that link, it was a broken link. So I said, okay, we need to update that because this
Yep.
link is like it brings me to it's a dead end basically.
Yep.
But
No, I'm
yeah,
totally guilty of this too, especially in emails. I get lazy and
yes,
I'll either just like paste the URL in there or I'll say something like click here to get to this slide or whatever it is. Totally. Everybody does it, but it's just something email isn't a huge deal. I mean, someone using a screen reader, it's still going to be a pain for them. It's when it comes to more of like your learning materials that you want to be really careful with this.
right,
And the three rules are for accessible links. It needs to be understandable when read out of context, unique to the web page or document, and inform the user what will appear if the link is clicked. So that's why things like click here, that is not informative and it's also not unique because you
right.
could have 5 different click here's. And again, if you're on a screen reader and you're like, oh, I just learned about UDL guidelines, I want to go to the UDL guidelines site, if you're like, find the hyperlink about UDL guidelines and the hyperlink
Oh,
says click here, right? Get it?
right.
Like, it doesn't tell you that you're going to go
Unless
find the UDL
unless
guidelines.
you unless you say something immediately afterwards, like click here to go to. But
But yes, but then you have to hyperlink. So here's a perfect example. I could say, click here for the UDL guidelines, but instead of hyperlinking click here, I hyperlink UDL guidelines. Does that make sense?
right,
That's now informative. That's now unique. It's when
right,
you hyperlink the click here, that's the problem. And the other end of it, that you can have uninformative link text, like click here or find this here or something like that. But you can
right,
also have
right,
overly detailed link text. So, like in the example of click here for the UDL guidelines, that whole sentence doesn't need to be hyperlinked. Only the two words UDL guidelines need to be hyperlinked.
right,
That's
right,
what tells you what you're going to find
right,
when you go to the website. I'm going to find the UDL guidelines.
right. Mm, well, yeah. Okay, it's a little past. So, and I did want to, respect your time because I assume you have to be somewhere.
Yes, I better
Okay.
go. I've got something to do this evening.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I could talk for another hour
Yeah. Thank you
about
so
accessibility, but
right.
yeah,
And
thanks for having me back.
yeah, and thank you for agreeing to return because I was like I
Absolutely.
we have to have a conversation about accessibility and I was glad that you were eager to
It's so
schedule.
important.
Yes.
Yep, for sure, for sure.
And so just a reminder before you head off, how can we keep up with you and see what you're doing?
Yes, so you can find anything and everything Lindy Hockenberry on my website is Lindy Hawk, so LindyHoc.com. So if you think of the Lindy Hawk, just change the P to a C, lindyhawk.com, and that's where you
Okay.
can find all the things and connect
Perfect.
with me on socials, sign up for my newsletter, all the stuff.
All right. Thank you again.
All right,
All
thank
right.
you.
All right. You have a great
Have
one.
a good evening. Bye.
Likewise.